The Conjuring universe has become the most financially successful horror franchise of all time. But could the next Conjuring film be the last? You guys, Nick from the Lost River Drive-In here, and tonight I wanted to talk to you guys about The Conjuring: Last Rites, the upcoming fourth film in the mainline Conjuring series, not including, the shared universe as a whole. Horror's version of the MCU, if you will. This movie was announced in April. It was announced that Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga would be back, and it was announced that David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick was going to write the script again. That's all we knew. We didn't have any word on a director. We didn't have any word on supporting cast. We didn't have any word on what story this movie would be pulling from Ed and Lorraine's life. We have no idea. That is all of the information that we have. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, The Conjuring has become the most financially successful horror series of all time. And I believe it's over $2 billion now at the worldwide box office, if I'm not mistaken, which is absurd. That's a lot of money, especially for a horror universe. I know it tends to skew more toward teenagers because it's not slasher or anything like that. But you know me, I'm a fan. Having said that, I'm more of a fan of the mainline Conjuring movies, The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 specifically. The Devil Made Me Do It was fine. But upon rewatches to that movie, I find that movie to just absolutely pale in comparison to the first two movies. I don't even think it holds a candle to them. Having said that, it is not the depths of Annabelle. So with how successful this Conjuring universe is, could The Conjuring: Last Rites be the final movie in the mainline Conjuring series? When this movie was first announced, I started to wonder. The way The Devil Made Me Do It ended, it was a kind of a nice send-off for Ed and Lorraine. Obviously, they had a bunch of other experiences throughout their careers and other stories that you could tell, but it kind of felt like they were tying a bow on it with that movie. It left Ed and Lorraine at a really good place, and you could have seen, okay, we got a trilogy, that was it. So I was worried. The title being announced as Last Rites, although I know that plays into, obviously, Catholicism and whatnot, I was even more worried. And then Patrick Wilson gave an interview last weekend to Bloody Disgusting's Boo Crew podcast. I will show you guys a screenshot of the episode right here. You guys can go find this episode if you'd like to. I implore you to do so. It's a really, really nice listen. But in this podcast interview, Patrick Wilson stated that contracts have not been signed yet, but he's looking forward to coming back and doing it. He also said that he looked forward to, quote, wrapping this up nicely. That's what he said when referring to The Conjuring: Last Rites. Again, please check out the podcast interview. The last 10 minutes or so is when he kind of touches on The Conjuring. And that was bittersweet to hear. The Conjuring universe, as I said, is super successful, and a lot of the movies, especially the ones with Patrick and Vera, are super well received. These movies, I know they don't work for everyone. You have to be into that kind of spooky, oogie boogie, demonic possession, paranormal type movie to like these movies. And I know a lot of people are just like, not for me. But a lot of people, I'd say more people, do like these movies, and I'm one of them. I'm one of the people that these movies really work for me. Part of that was because I grew up religious, so I do believe in ghosts and malevolent forces and whatnot. And in what form? I don't know. Don't ask me. My beliefs are all over the place. So watching movies like this, I fear that some of that stuff can be real, and so it works for me on a primal level. I am really, really bummed to hear that Patrick is looking at potentially wrapping up the role of Ed Warren in this next and potentially final Conjuring film. Now, I posted this on Twitter with the quotes from the podcast interview, and I had some people saying, there's no way it's going to be over. Guys, I'm not talking about the shared universe. I'm talking about the mainline Conjuring films. That's what I'm speaking about. And I think that as more time goes on, it's more and more likely that this is probably the end. Because Patrick just had a smash hit with Insidious: The Red Door as his directorial debut. And he said in this interview, that is where he kind of wants his career to go from here. Not that he'll never act, but he wants to become a director. He really wants to move into that space. And although I was very mixed on Insidious the Red Door, there's one thing about that movie that I wasn't mixed on: the technical artistry that was on display. He knew what he was doing. So I could absolutely see this being the swan song. And you're not going to make another The Conjuring film without Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. It won't happen. It's Ed and Lorraine's stories. If Ed and Lorraine are not there, it's not going to happen. It's weird to me because I just think that the mainline Conjuring universe movies, they make a ton of money. They're not expensive to make. Patrick and Vera love working together, and they're pretty well received critically and commercially. So I just don't know why you would end it unless the actors want to be done. In which case, I can't argue with them. I mean, I never ever thought it would turn into a franchise. We got The Conjuring in 2013. I thought it was incredible. We got a second one. I was like, what? We got a third one. I was like, what? And now they've announced a fourth one. It has really, really grown into something that I'm going to look back on 20, 30 years from now and find that to be one of my favorite horror series ever. The mainline Conjuring movies. They're just truly some of my favorites. But with Patrick moving on to other things, and with him and Vera getting older, and maybe with WB looking at building this universe out a little bit instead of just keeping to the core stories of Ed and Lorraine, it can totally make sense for them to want to be done. I also just get the vibe from Patrick Wilson, especially after, Insidious the Red Door being his swan song as Josh Lambert, that he's ready to move on from certain. If The Conjuring Last Rites is the final mainline Conjuring universe movie, although I will be sad, I'll just say this: nail it. Absolutely nail it. Send this thing home in a glorious way. That's all I care about. Make this a great movie. The Devil Made Me Do It is not a bad movie, but it's not a great movie. And I would not have been okay with that being the final mainline Conjuring universe movie. There are plenty of great stories from Ed and Lorraine's history, whether you believe them or not. Still, pick one of them and go out with an absolute bang. That's what I want to see here. I feel like that's what a lot of fans of this series want to see here. Obviously, with the actors and writers strike going on right now, who the hell knows how long it'll be before we get writing on this, before we get pre-production. By the way, I stand with the actors and the writers. I absolutely do. I think that these studio execs that are making hundreds of billions of dollars are greedy assholes that think that these people that write their material and act in their material are just ants and peasants. That is wrong. They're not. And we as audience members are going to suffer sooner rather than later, because all this time these strikes are happening, eventually it's going to come time to pay the piper next year when no new content is coming out, because they would be making that content right now. But again, I support them entirely in their plight. And if that is what they have to do in order to get what they so rightfully deserve, let them do it. And honestly, eat the rich. Fuck those studio execs. But anyway, you guys let me know down below, do you want this to be the final Conjuring film? Are you sad about this sounding like it's going to be the final Conjuring film? And if you are, and if it is, tell me why and what you want from this movie. Please, let's discuss anything and everything pertaining to The Conjuring down below in the comments section. Please follow me on social media. Become a patron today at patreon.com/The Lost River Drive-In. Listen to the You Need a Horror podcast now on all audio platforms or watch on YouTube. And this is Nick at The Lost River Drive-In, and I am pulling out.